quiet. So if this fails, I promise you my voice will probably be enough. First, let's recognize the elephant in the room. I am the last line of defense between you and lunch. So I get it, all right? I understand, and I promise to try to make this value-packed and make the next 45 minutes not the longest 45 minutes. With that being said, we're going to be talking about building an internal maintenance team, a world-class internal maintenance team. Now, I'm not going to get into the nuances of, do you put it under a separate LLC or do you incorporate it under your own property management LLC? That's a topic for a different discussion. What I want to talk to you, though, about is internalizing maintenance rather than externalizing maintenance or using your vendor network. So without further ado, let's get into it. Who am I? Why do you care? So my name is Justin Mann. I am the CEO and co-founder of Stonelink Property Management. That's one of my day jobs. More on that in a little bit. We are a property management company based out of Rhode Island, so New England, important for this discussion. The vast majority of the assets under management we have about 1,500 doors under management, are scattered site, low density, multifamily residential. So think 3 to 15 unit apartment buildings littering the landscape. Now, something that you may not know about Rhode Island, if you can find it on a map, and I'm not going to blame you if you can't, if you can find it on a map, something you may not know about Rhode Island is it has some of the oldest housing stock in the United States. 80% of the housing stock is older than 1978. And we actually have plenty of properties that we manage that are 80, 90, over 100 years old, right? So we have scattered site multifamily. We're in New England where we have weather, and we are working with very, very old housing stock. And the vast majority of what we manage is Class C plus B minus assets, right? So I want to paint that picture because maintenance is a big deal for us. It's a really big deal. And more so than if you might be in the Sun Belt state where your biggest concern is mold, humidity, air conditioner, air handlers failing. We have all manner of maintenance that we have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. So much so that we kind of joke internally and say we're really a maintenance company masquerading as a property management company. Joking, not joking. True story. So to give you an idea by the numbers, because I'm a numbers person, right? Last year in 2023, we did over 12,000 melds. Okay, so we're averaging over 1,000 melds per month across our portfolio between our maintenance technicians, and I'll give you a force structure breakdown in just a bit. We had between 900 to 1,000 labor hours per week we were booking just on our maintenance staff, internal only. That's not external vendors, that's just our own people. So now how do we do that? What do we do? So we have a force structure on the maintenance side of about 30 maintenance techs, but we break it down. We have a turnover team and we have our break fix guys. And those two managers are actually right here at this table. And the reason we do that is we found specialization is key, right? And so backing up those 30 techs in the field are 7 back office folks. So that's a maintenance manager, a turnover manager, an assistant maintenance manager, and then you have an assistant turnover manager, and a few other assorted folks, the maintenance coordinators being amongst those lists. So that's our force structure. And I wanted to give you some context because I think from a frame of reference standpoint, it's important you understand where I'm speaking from. And so we are in a very, very maintenance-heavy environment. It is continuous and ongoing, so much so that our second hire when we started this company back in 2008 was a maintenance technician. Right after we hired our admin person, the second person we hired was a maintenance technician, and we never looked back. We always knew we wanted to internalize maintenance. More on that in a bit. So here's what we're going to be talking about. Obviously, in-house maintenance. I think we got that covered. But I want to talk about the why, the how, and the what. And the first one is really, really important because I'm going to assume everybody in this room does not have an in-house maintenance team right now. But you're sitting here either because the other sessions didn't really look enticing, or you feel like you're closer to the food, or maybe, just maybe, you're thinking about actually going full force into in-house maintenance. So I want to speak to the why, because if I can convince you that it's worth looking into, and you want to click that I want to learn more button, right? Then the next 2 slides are going to make a lot more sense. So we're going to spend some time on the why, and it also ties into some things you've already heard. So I think it'll start to gel a little bit. And then I'm going to show you how we execute against it, because that's really important. It's once you understand, okay, Justin, you got my attention. I like the idea. I want to do this. Right? Now I can talk to you about how we do this. And then lastly, we're going to wrap up with what does it look like in practice? What do we do day to day? How do we measure it? How do we inspect what we expect? What does that actually look like? And then we'll end with some questions with whatever time we have left. But I will tell you right now, full disclaimer on the questions, I'll be happy to speak to you about force structure, strategy, workflow, implementation, all that kind of good stuff. If you want to get into the nuts and bolts of the Property Meld reporting and the workflows we have built and the real granular stuff, the 2 guys sitting at that table know a lot more about that than I do. So, Joe, raise your hand. That's Joe Marzilli. He's our turnover manager. Richard, please. He's our maintenance manager. These guys live and breathe the actual application of where the gears come together on a day-to-day basis. So without further ado, let's jump into it. All right, so why? Maintenance matters. Or flip that around, what are the matters of maintenance? One of the very first reasons, I would argue the overarching reason that we, early days, okay, within the first 7 months of the company's existence, wanted to hire an internal maintenance person is because we wanted to improve our outcomes. What we found early on was that every time we externalized something, we were at risk of not getting the outcome we wanted. Why? Because we have less control. That's not our employee. I don't sign their paycheck. I don't have the same level of control over that person. I also don't dictate their company culture, their mission statement, the values they operate. Every time I externalized something, I was giving all of that up. And what we found was, when we looked back at where things went off the rails, more often than not, it was when we externalized it. So we were super motivated to find a way to internalize it. And so for us, improving the outcome was the #1 driver, because I will make the argument that outside of tenant screening, resident placement, whatever you want to call that process, which we truly believe is one of the most highly leveraged activities a property manager can do, finding and placing really good tenants, which is not the scope of this discussion, but is worth mentioning, is obviously extremely important. But in a horse race with it, I would argue, is executing with excellence against maintenance. Because at the end of the day, your clients own investment properties, most likely not for philanthropic reasons. They own these things to make money. And yet every time you actually need to do maintenance, you are taking money literally out of their pocket, okay? Instead of getting $10, I had to spend $5 on maintenance. So I'm sorry, Mr. Client, you or Mrs. Client, you only get $5, right? So this is an area for obvious friction. They bought these properties because they want to make money, and every time maintenance happens, it costs them money. And so we wanted to make sure we were executing with excellence. And so improving your outcome, it should be one of the drivers in this discussion. Yes, you may have great vendors. I'm here to tell you, though, your employees can do it better. And that's one of the #1 reasons. Let's get into cost management. Ray spent a good deal of time on this stage not long ago talking to you about one particular line item, R&M, repair and maintenance, and I swear we didn't collaborate. Okay, cost management is a huge reason we wanted to internalize maintenance. If I pay their salary, if I can control the tools, the technology, even the vehicles, route optimization, if I can control their schedule, if I can control all that, I stand a far better chance of being able to control those costs, right? And now all of a sudden, I've got a better story I can talk to our clients about. I'm able to deliver more value for my client because I can show them, more on that later, I can show them that, look, I'm not a line item cost. Property management isn't a line item cost. I'm actually enhancing your P&L because I'm delivering better value, right? So cost management between salaries, tools, technology to reduce your operating overhead helps your clients, and helps your company, and in turn helps you grow. Which leads into value-added service. There are a lot of technologies. Again, you guys heard about it earlier today. There are a lot of technologies out there, software platforms, huge amount being poured into enabling, empowering, making the landlord be able to do more without you, right? And so if you are a coordinator, if you're a rock star PM, but you outsource everything, right? There could come a time where the landlord looks and says, you're a great communicator, you really get things done, but I'm getting squeezed on taxes, I'm getting squeezed on insurance, I'm getting squeezed on all of my overhead costs. I gotta do something about it, and if I eliminate you, I'm eliminating a 5, 6, 7, 8, 10% management fee, and that's something that I can actually relate to. However, if you're able to deliver an in-house solution and truly be a one-stop shop and actually be able to save them money, you're adding more value beyond the traditional rockstar PM role of command and control and coordination and communication. You're actually the solution. You are now part of delivering the service chain, if you will, and that means you're more valuable to the client. It's harder to replace you because if they replace you, they're losing your awesome maintenance team. Right? And now they're going to go out on the street and find those rockstar handymen who hopefully can deliver the same service at the cost you're doing it. But that's a really tall order. We all know that labor is a very, very difficult thing for us, right? Maintenance technician labor, handyman labor, plumbers, electricians, the workforce as it relates to construction management is very much in demand. So if you're able to insource that and you own that service chain, you now obviously have a far higher value proposition than you did before. Which then leads into this word that we've been hearing a lot about just on this stage in the last couple of hours, asset management. I'm a firm believer, and I know there's PMs out there that say, oh, we're property managers, we're not asset managers. I would argue otherwise, and I'll back it up. We need to continue to demonstrate more and more value as property managers. I don't know about you, but our market is very competitive, and our number one competition isn't other PMs. Our number one competition are self-managing landlords, right? Those are the people that we're actually competing against. I have to prove my worth every day, why they should go with us and why we don't actually cost them money, we save them money. And truly managing an asset means when we sit down with a client, when we first onboard them, I want to talk to them about their property or properties. I want to understand what's your strategy? What condition do you want to maintain this? What's the long-term goal? Why do you even own this thing? Is this a cash flow discussion? Is this a long-term equity play? What is it? I've got one client that uses a self-directed 401k, and he's turned his property into this cash cow, but there's reasons to do that. So he invests huge sums of money into this property, but we established that early on. Either way, whatever their strategy is, you want to establish that up front, and then having your own in-house team can help you truly execute against that asset management, right? You can set up a schedule to maintain that property in the condition in the circumstance, under the circumstances that you're operating, and you set that expectation on the front end with your client, and now you're actually being able to do, wait for it, proactive management, not reactive, right? And especially when it comes to maintenance. Most of the time when we talk maintenance, it's break fix, there's something wrong, somebody calls, somebody enters a meld, and we react. But asset management really gets into being proactive. And I would argue that having an in-house maintenance team allows you to do that. But now let's get to a piece that everybody talks about, revenue. I want to go on record. You can and should make money with an in-house team. And I've heard the arguments otherwise, but I'm telling you right now, you can and should make money with an in-house team. However, it's not easy, okay? It's a difficult thing, but I've worked in other industries, I've run other companies in other industries, and in my humble opinion, as I happen to have the mic, I'm going to share it with you. In my humble opinion, there are a lot easier ways to make money than running a property management company, okay? There are other things you could go do to collect a paycheck, right? We're caught between, we are the proverbial rock and hard place. clients, tenants, maybe the municipality, maybe if you're really lucky, the state attorney general, or whoever else wants to start throwing darts and arrows at you. There are easier ways to go about making a living than property management, but you've committed to this, you're already here, you're already doing it. This actually in the long run will make your job easier. That has been our experience, and I'm sharing that with you. And so making money with an in-house team is absolutely doable, but it requires command, control, efficiency, transparency, and oversight. And we'll talk more about how we make all that happen. But you can and should make money initially with break fix. But I will also tell you, it can lead to bigger revenue opportunities. You may start out repairing broken faucets and unsticking sticky doors and fixing broken windows and all that kind of stuff. Little ticket items, right? And they fill up your day, they fill up your week, they fill up your quarter. But as your team gets better, as your skill set improves, as your confidence goes up, you can actually start internalizing more and more of that maintenance work that you used to externalize. What about rebuilding a staircase? What about, building a deck out? Or you do the external painting or the siding or even getting into roofing. We've already started going down that road, and the more you start to be able to internalize, the stickier your clients become, assuming you're executing with excellence. Right? So if you're actually doing the front end PM thing and you're executing on the maintenance side and you've internalized that and they see that, you're super sticky because you're the solution. You're the person that's actually delivering it end to end. Not just an aggregator, not just a coordinator, but they got to go through you to get to the services that are delivering the results that you've shown them are awesome. And so that leads us to the last two things, which is really where we started, if you think about it. In our experience, and the data supports this, the number one reason good residents leave, assuming there isn't a life event, whatever that may be, is bad maintenance. Your residents, at the end of the day, if they're good residents, want to stay, pay their rent on time, take care of the property, relatively speaking, right? But really just go about their life. They don't want to talk to you. You may be awesome. Your resident specialist may be fantastic. They might have the best personality in the world. But I promise you, you're not the first person on the list they want to call. They're only going to reach out to you when something goes wrong. And so when something goes wrong, all they want is for it to be fixed as quickly, as efficiently as possible, hopefully the first time. And so if you have a well-trained in-house maintenance team, I'm making the argument that you are far better positioned to execute with excellence, to fix that item and retain that resident, which leads to client retention. Client retention, at the end of the day, it's the holy grail, right? We don't want churn, right? Because attracting and retaining are an ongoing process for any property management company. But if your BDM is constantly bringing in new clients just to replace the ones that you lost because of churn, you're never going to grow. And it's wholly inefficient. And it costs you money. So one of the best ways to retain clients that we've found is executing with excellence against maintenance in a value-added proposition, right? So you're demonstrating value, you're managing their asset, you're reducing resident churn, which as I understand it in the SFR space, and we don't spend a lot of time there, but I've talked to a lot of PMs across the country, in the SFR space, when a resident moves out, it's the most likely time that a client might say, you know what? This has been fun, you're awesome, but I'm just gonna put the house up on the market and sell. They have a liquid asset, right? Selling a single family home in this market is not the hardest thing in the world, right? In the multifamily, it's different. We have residents moving in and out all the time. But in the SFR world, my understanding is that's really not the case. Either way, your clients want the residents to stay, pay the rent on time, and not have that churn. Having an in-house maintenance team enhances the likelihood that you can do that and thus help yourself grow. So what does this look like? How does this actually happen? That graphic is in the shape of a wheel for a reason. This is not a linear process. If you're just starting out building an in-house team, I do not want to paint the picture that you are literally going to go down your checklist and say, okay, I did that, I did that, I did that, I did that, I'm done. You're not. It's on a continuum. This wheel goes round and round, and one segment does feed into another. But I want you to understand something, that it is an ongoing process, but that's okay because you're already used to that. You're already doing that. With your property management company in the traditional sense, are you not already constantly reevaluating, how do we do this better? How do we do that better? This isn't working as well as it should. Our internal motto is do it better today than we did yesterday. If you're in the corporate world, they call it continuous improvement. It's really boring, but whatever. It's super important. That being said, if you're starting from scratch, you got to start somewhere. So here's where you want. First and foremost, you want to assess the needs of your assets under management, right? I get asked all the time, well, Justin, I'm interested in starting an in-house maintenance team. How many techs do I need? I have 50 doors, I have 100 doors, I have 200 doors. I have no idea. I don't know what types of doors those are. I don't know where they are. I don't know the condition they're in. I don't know what the level of maintenance is that you're prepared to do. So what is it you're trying to take on? There's a number of questions that you have to answer. But the good news is you've already got that information because you've been doing this. You're just externalizing it today. So data mine the information that you already have and look at what your needs are and assess them. It's not just about door count, I can promise you that. You really need to look at what are the types of melds that you handle on a regular basis? What are the types of things that break on a regular basis, right? Because that will then lead you into hiring strategically. Skills and the assessment of skills when you go into hiring are a critical element. But I will tell you, it may have said in the Bible, all men are created equal. Techs are not. You can get techs that are rock stars with electrical and they suck at plumbing, or vice versa. Or they're really good with carpentry, but they have no idea how to fix a broken outlet. Whatever the case is, after assessing your needs, you need to assess the skills of the people that you're interviewing and understand how their skills match up with you. But almost more importantly than skills, I want to really stress on this because it's going to lead into the thing that I'm super passionate about. And that is, when you're talking to a tech, you should be interviewing them in the same way you'd be interviewing any other member of your company. You want to know what is their attitude, what is their aptitude, and are they a good cultural fit for your company? That may be a surprise to you, I don't know. It took us a while to really realize that. And the reason is because these people will become the face of your company. They will be brand ambassadors more so than anybody else in your office. They're going to be the person standing in the living room face to face with your tenant. When something's broken, they're pissed off, it's not working, all they want is to be fixed, right? That technician all of a sudden becomes the face of your organization. Like it, hate it, whatever the case is, that is the God's honest truth. But here's the really good news. They're going to be wearing your branding. They're going to have hopefully showed up in your vehicle. They're going to have your hat on, and they will have already been aligned with your mission statement. They will have already been aligned with your core values. They will already be aligned with your cultural fit. So you have confidence now that the person that is representing your company isn't a third-party vendor who you have no idea what their company is like, but is actually your employee. And if you did a good job hiring them, for all the reasons we just talked about, right, you now have a brand ambassador standing in a living room who can really elevate your brand in the eyes of your resident, who is your customer, not your client, right? And that's an opportunity to shine. But we've all been on the other end. When a tech shows up, maybe it was externalized, right, and they did a bad job. And all of a sudden, your company is a zero in the eyes of the tenant. Or more in practical sense, 1-star review on Google, thanks so much, right? We've all been there. My God, what happened? I don't understand. And then you go into damage control. The opposite of that is you hired somebody, they had the right skill set, you had great transparency and clarity and command and control over what they were doing, they were a cultural fit for your company, they were aligned with your core values, they know what your mission is, and they're out there representing you in the best possible light possible. 5-star review on Google, you're welcome, right? And over this goes. And so that also speaks to the training and development, and it's not a fire and forget. You want to understand what that tech's goals are. Build out a career path for them. Build in training and development that's aligned with what your business needs are. More on that later, because Meld does a great job of showing you where the tech is really good and where they're not, and you can align your training and development for that tech, right, to continue developing them in that role. And so then you get job enrichment, you get retention, you get people that want to stay with you, which continues to build value for your company. Let's talk about the technology side of this. We use Meld. We love Meld. This is not a paid commercial, but obviously it would be weird if they had me on the stage and we didn't use Meld, but maybe it happens, I don't know. But Meld's not the only thing we use. We do use Z-Inspector. We do use T-Sheets, which is now called QuickBooks Time or Workforce or whatever the case is. And we use that for digital clocking as well as actually tracking these folks. Where's my phone? Here's my phone. All right, it's running on their phone. So it's tracking them, allowing them to clock in, clock out, and we match that up against what's happening in Meld, right? So these are some of the things we do. We also have dash cams in the vehicles. We have trackers on the vehicles. We have 360 cameras that we integrate with our inspections. There's all this technology that we integrate together, and while it sounds daunting, you might actually be using some of this all at once. But what it does is it gives us ultimate control, ultimate transparency about our own folks, what they're doing, where they're doing it, why they're doing it. Right? So when they submit that work order as completed, we're not taking their word for it, right? We've got the pictures, we've got the video, we know when they arrived, we know when they left, we know what they were doing, because the maintenance coordinator is keeping track of that. But this technology allows us to have the control that you otherwise may not have if that's not your employee. Good luck implementing all this, by the way, if this isn't your company, right? If this isn't your employee. I seriously doubt an external vendor is going to allow you to slap a dash cam in their car, put a GPS tracker on it, have an app running on their phone that's tracking where they are, what they're doing, when they're doing it, right? I haven't found any of our vendors that'll allow that, but your employees, you can, and you set that expectation, which leads me into the last point of this slide. Defining metrics. So it's really, really important with your technicians, just like it is with the rest of your property management company. Anybody, okay, I haven't asked one, so you gotta give me a little break here. Show of hands. Who here uses KPIs, KRAs, or some actual quantifiable measurement? Really, that's it? Come on. All right, that's enough, I got it, all right. So you all use that with your property management employees today, right? You wanna have the same implementation with your techs. And actually, Meld does a great job, and I would argue Insights Pro does an even better job, and it's allowed us to establish metrics for our technicians, and we're telling them what those metrics are up front. Okay, say this is what you're going to get measured on, just like your property manager, just like, you know, maybe your maintenance coordinator if you have one already, just like your resident specialist, or whatever your property management roles are. I don't know how you define them, right? You're going to define those metrics for your techs just like you do for any other person in your property management company. So you set an expectation, right? And this is really important. You're going to say to them, look, this is how we measure you. This is how you can impact your compensation. More on that in a second. This is how you can contribute to the overall growth of this company. Get their buy-in, but you got to tell them how they do it, right? You got to give them the roadmap, right? You can't just turn them loose and be like, oh, good luck, Godspeed, have a great day, right? So you're setting those expectations, and then you have to inspect what you expect and follow up with them on that. Pretty recently, we ended a 3-month contest, and we've done this before. We ended up 3-month contest with our maintenance technicians, and we created teams this time because we have some really, really good maintenance technicians that just blow everybody else out of the water. We're trying to get everybody up to that standard. But like I said, not all techs are created equal, right? So this time, just so we didn't have a couple of the techs run away with the contest, take home all the booty, right? We created teams. And so we split up those rock stars and we put them on different teams. And then we added the other techs to those teams. We did a 3-month Google review contest and Property Meld review contest. And we set the expectation. And then we gave them regular reporting on how they were doing. And at the end of it, we were able to garner, I want to say, Richard, keep me honest here, 81 reviews, I want to say?
83.
83. All right, I suck at math. All right. 83 reviews over a 90-day period, and no, those were not one-star reviews. Okay? We garnered 83 five-star reviews over a 90-day period from our technicians. And it was them going out there knowing exactly what was expected of them, what they were supposed to deliver. They were aligned with our culture. They were aligned with our company, our core values, all of that. They checked all those boxes. And when they were out there, they wanted to deliver the best possible service and were now incentivized to do so and understood how they were going to get measured. And the results speak for themselves. And the residents were happy to give the reviews because the technician did what they wanted. They showed up, they knew what the problem was, they assessed what needed to be done, they fixed it most of the time on the first time, and they closed the loop. And at the end of it, they were like, listen, if you're happy with our service, we'd really appreciate your feedback. We have these little cards, we hand it out, scan this thing, and let us know how we did. And the residents were effusive in their praise because the tech swooped in with their cape and they were the hero of the day. And that was a representative of our brand, not another company, not somebody else. It was our brand. They show up in our bright blue trucks. I mean, you can see these things from orbit, for God's sakes. They're wearing our uniforms. They got our hats on. It's our brand that's out there. And so every time they do a great job, they associate with our name. And so then that helps build our brand, and our PMs and our APMs and our resident specialists weren't even involved. So I want to come back to this one more time, and I want you to keep this idea of this wheel in your heads because we're going to talk about it again. But having said all this, it's really important to remember this. Again, this is not on a continuum. You will need to revisit different elements of this. Here's a great reason. Maybe you all of a sudden pick up a brand new portfolio and you double the number of doors under management. So you had a great internal maintenance team. Everything was running swimmingly, right? Work orders are getting, melds are getting closed out. Your mean time to repair is awesome. Your average customer satisfaction rating is great. Everything is going on great. You're ready to go start managing this property management company from underneath a palm tree in the Bahamas. But then opportunity knocks. And all of a sudden, a client shows up on your doorstep, huge portfolio, opportunity for growth. This is awesome, except I don't have a maintenance team to support this. What am I going to do? This is why it is a wheel. You know what your company's needs are because you've assessed them. You can reassess, of course. You know how to hire because you've been doing it. So you're going to ramp up that pipeline again. We get some ideas on how to do that, right? You already know what the metrics are that you're going to define for that technician. And because you know how to hire, you're going to have an opportunity to deploy more people that are going to be more brand ambassadors to elevate your brand to the best possible level, right? So it's all a good news story, sort of. It's a lot of work. But again, if you wanted to do something easy, you wouldn't be doing property management. But once you're here, man, it's hard to get out. I describe property management like it's a lobster trap. Once you're in, it's like you just can't get out. So I would argue that this is an extension of what you're already doing, and it's going to position you better for the future and future-proof your business for growth and from other competitors, mostly self-managers. So what does this actually look like in application? And I'm addressing this question from the standpoint of how do we measure? What are the metrics we use? What does it look like in application? I'm going to break it down in a couple of different segments. I'm going to talk about the maintenance coordinators, how we measure them. I'm going to talk about the maintenance technicians themselves, how we measure them. I want to talk about cost, because again, maintenance is where the rubber meets the road. We're taking money out of the pocket of our investors, so cost is huge. And I'm going to talk about overall how you're controlling that outcome and then the idea of continuous improvement. But let's start with one of the things that we spend the most time looking at, efficient scheduling. The metric that we spend a lot of time agonizing over is speed of repair. From the time that that meld gets created to when it's assigned, to when it's scheduled, to when it's completed, we're looking at all those stages. And the reason we're looking at all those stages is because when you break it down and you get finite, you begin to understand where, if any, there are any bottlenecks. right? We now have benchmarks, more on that in a second. We now have benchmarks for where we should be, and if your number isn't there, you need to start peeling back the layers of this onion as to why your speed of repair isn't where it needs to be. Because we all know that melds, maintenance, work orders, whatever you want to call them, do not get better with time. They just don't, right? These things are best when they are identified and handled as quickly as possible. So speed of repair is something we keep a hawk eye on, and we're constantly reevaluating the different stages. We assigned it really quick, we got it scheduled really quick, but then it stayed open longer. Why? Which kind of leads us into meld created to meld closed. And there's two ways we look at that. One of the ways we look at is we want to know how fast that meld was closed, and if things are outside of our bell curve, if we are taking longer than the average, we need to understand why. Is it the type of meld? Do we understand what we're doing? Do we have the right skills to attack this thing? Is this thing outside of our scope of work, of what we can handle? What are the reasons that this particular meld is taking longer to close? Because it's dragging down our average, and we need to attack that. But the other reason we look at meld created versus meld closed is because we want to understand load balancing. We have 3 maintenance coordinators on our staff, along with an assistant maintenance manager who also acts as a maintenance coordinator overseeing the others. And we load balance because we know on average how many average open melds any one coordinator can handle, right? And we also know on average how frequently melds get created, right? And so if we're pouring those in the top, we need to have a certain number going out the bottom. Otherwise, our cup is going to runneth over. And so what we do is we look at that from a load balancing standpoint. If we see one particular maintenance coordinator whose number of open melds is going up and up and up because their closed melds are not keeping up with the average, we need to dive in and understand what's going on there. So from an efficiency of scheduling, those are some things that we keep real close eye on. Performance monitoring. I'm talking about from a technician level, and again, Insights Pro has really helped us do a lot of this. There's other ways we keep track of performance monitoring, but one of the things we really want to know is starting at the technician level, not at the company level or the department level, however you want to look at it. At the technician level, how is that technician doing from an average resident satisfaction rating? I've got Joe over here, I've got John over here. Joe's killing it. He's bringing in a 4.7. The company average is 4.5. So he's pulling us up. John over here, I don't know what's going on in his life, but he's sucking wind because he's at a 4.3. He's pulling us down. I want to know about that, right? Because otherwise, all I'm going to see is that average customer rating for the entire organization starting to go down, but I won't know why. I've got to do a root cause analysis. I got to get into the bottom of it and figure out what the hell is going on. Well, I find out John's got problems. So let's go talk to John. John, why are you sucking wind? Well, then we're going to look at something else. I want to know how John's doing in his performance against certain categories. Well, as it turns out, it's kind of our fault on the maintenance coordinator side because we've been assigning John to categories or melds that require skills that he just doesn't have, right? So John's going out there, and he has to go out multiple times, and he's calling in for backup because he doesn't know how to fix the problems that we're assigning him to, right? So now we understand that John's weak in this area. Let's call it electrical. And we keep sending John on electrical calls. Why are we doing this, right? He's weak in electrical. Let's go over here to Joe. Joe's a rock star in electrical. Get him over there, right? But it's also an opportunity. I'm a big believer in this. The obstacle is an opportunity, right? So if you have an obstacle, John in this case, who sucks at electrical, look at that and say, John, I got great news for you. We're sending you back to technical school, or we're going to partner you with Joe over here, and you're going to learn electrical, my friend, which is going to enhance your value to the company, right? Which means you have the ability to make more money, which means we can also assign you to more melds, and you can close those out with remarkable efficiency, right? This is winning. This is what winning looks like. They make more money, you make more money, the resident is happy because now John knows how to do electrical, right? And the client's happy because the resident's happy, and we're doing this efficiently, so we're not wasting their money. So even though there was an electrical problem and everybody agrees on it, the client has a high degree of satisfaction that you have handled that with the most efficient method possible, with the most efficient person possible. So you've reduced their cost to the lowest possible amount so they feel good about their life. And they realize that while you took some money out of their pocket, you took less than if they had done it themselves. And that's really, really important. We're in the job justification business every day. Well, I'll speak for myself, I'll speak for our company. We're in the job justification business every single day. Every single day. And I will argue that maintenance is probably the most likely area that you can either justify your existence or give your client an excuse to send you a Dear John letter and say, Vaya con Dios. It's been fun, you've been great, I really like you, I'll miss the Christmas gift, but I'm going to go a different direction. Nobody wants to get that email from a good client, right? So if you can do all the things we just talked about, you have a far higher likelihood of retaining that client and making them an evangelist for your company. And they're going to go talk to their other investor friends and say, gee, Pete, Sue, I know you're doing this on your own, and I was where you were, and that was what I was doing, but I'm telling you right now, these guys are going to be able to do it better. They're going to take it off your plate, and you're actually going to spend less. I know it sounds like heresy, but I don't have a dog in the fight because I don't own that company, so I'm telling you as a friend, as a fellow investor, and believe me, and all of a sudden you get a phone call from Sue or Pete or whoever, and your client just referred you another lead. Winning, right? So cost transparency, I know we're winding this down. Cost transparency. So let's talk about Meld, T-sheets, other areas, vehicle tracking, dash cams, and oversight. We look at these things so that we know where our techs are, why they're there, when they got there, when they left, right? Not just at the vehicle level, but at the person level, because the app's running on their phone, I know where they're at, and we can correlate that, cross-reference that, and we do. True story, we fired more than one tech because we were able to see, well, you said you were at X, but you're actually at Y. We'll see you later. Thanks for stealing from the company, right? But all jokes aside, there is the technology that we've employed that allows you to control the cost to the best of your ability. And so when you get that owner call, say, oh my God, why'd you spend 4 hours, or why'd you spend, $40 or $400 or whatever the number was to fix my faucet? It's like, whoa, hold on. Here's what they did. They went out here, they were there here, they did this, and by the way, I got vehicle tracking to show where they were, when they were, and why they were there. The conversation's over at that point. You've reestablished trust. They now believe that you have the process, procedure, and the mechanisms in place to protect their interests, day in and day out. This is a part, full transparency and disclosure, expenditure reporting on a per meld, per property, per unit basis. We're not there yet. I love that Meld can do it. We haven't really implemented it to the full capability yet because of our billing system, but where we're working at getting, and I would encourage you to do the same, is that holy grail of being able to show your clients, look, I know it sucks that you had to replace a hot water tank, right? But we all agree you had to replace a hot water tank. But here's the average national cost, here's what the average material costs are and labor costs, and here's what we cost you. And the average is here, and we're here, we're saving you money, you're welcome, right? Cost is going to be, I wholeheartedly agree, and again, I didn't collaborate with Ray on this, but I wholeheartedly agree that being able to show not only cost transparency, but value through delivering a better cost discussion, a better R&M number for your clients, is going to help you retain and grow in the new world order that we're marching steadily towards. And so cost transparency, controlling costs are huge. And it also talks about controlling your outcome. And we do that on the maintenance coordinator side because it's all about communication. I want to know how many chats they had on a per engagement level. I want to know how many phone calls they had on a per engagement level. I want to know how much communication they had. I promise this can be the last time I ask you to raise your hands. Who here has flown and your flight was delayed and you're at the gate and you're just waiting, right? If you've ever flown, you better have your hand in the air. Otherwise, you're blessed by gods and angels because you've never had a delayed flight. Okay, the worst thing that can happen is the gate agent is radio silent. And you're just sitting there. And you're staring at your airframe. Your plane is there, right? But you don't know why you can't get on this tin can and go to wherever the hell you're going, right? You don't know, except they're doing their job. They get on the mic. Ladies and gentlemen, we're really sorry that we've had to have this wait. There's a mechanical issue. The engineering team is all over it like white on rice. We expect us to be able to board in the next 15 minutes. And even if 15 minutes shows up and they're still not able to board, if they're good, and God help you, I hope they are, they get back on and they give you that update and another update. So while melds and work orders don't get better with time like wine, okay, communication helps bridge the gap. And so we really do pay attention to that communication chain at the maintenance corner level. You want to know how often, how frequently, and what is the type of communication that your coordinators are having, right? And their resident satisfaction rating, I promise you, will reflect their quality and quantity of communication, right? So you want to pay close attention. Now, me in my seat, I told you guys in the beginning of this, I don't even get into this level on a day-to-day. These guys who I trust, the leadership team, absolutely do. We go through it on a weekly basis. But the number that I pay attention to is kind of what I call the CEO number, right? Your average resident satisfaction rating. That's on your dashboard. It's staring you in the face. Hopefully it's not making you cry or cringe or want to curl up in the fetal position. But there's two of them. There's the 30-day number, okay? And that's showing your trend, and the trend is your friend, right? And that's the one you can really impact and you can measure and say, hey, I just made this change and it's making a difference. And then there's the lifetime. And I gotta tell you, again, I'm an open book, the lifetime still makes me cringe a little, because where we are now is not where we started. In the early days, man, we got punched in the face a lot. Like, we shed some blood, maybe a few tears. I'm not going to admit to that, but we definitely shed blood. And so it took us a while to get where we are. But those two numbers really helped me at a high level to understand how the overall department is doing. All right, we've talked about the maintenance coordinator level, we've talked about technician level, we've talked about, understanding kind of the flow that leads up to that level. But if you're a broker owner, or if you're running the business, you may not have the time to get into it at the levels we've talked about. You should have somebody that is, right? But you can pay attention to those numbers. And then the last thing I want to talk about is benchmarks. Now, full disclosure, I am a hyper-competitive person, okay? And it has nothing to do with property management. I've been this way since I was a child. I'm in a 12-step program for it. My therapist says I'm making progress. I don't think so, but whatever. I want to know how I'm doing against everybody else in the marketplace. Having benchmarks finally, is an awesome thing. And I'll tell you, we're ahead in some of the benchmarks, and we're behind in a few. Not by a lot, but the fact that we're not at least on benchmark drives me a distraction. But we have the data now, which is awesome. And you should be paying attention to this. And I'm going to tell you right now, I will die on this hill. It is far easier to affect change against those numbers if you have an in-house team versus externalizing this, because you have the control that we've just spent the last, 40 minutes, 45 minutes talking about. And so if you've taken nothing away from this discussion, take this. By internalizing the team, you have the ability to take back control over the outcome. You're improving the outcome, and you're taking over control of that outcome in a way that you just can't realize in the same fashion by externalizing. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. I'm not saying there aren't hard days ahead of you. I'm not saying you're not going to shed some blood, sweat, and tears. But I'd also argue you're doing that already with your core PM business, right? And so you're not afraid of this. You're doing it today. But I'm going to give you one other reason. For those of you paying attention, if you haven't fallen asleep and I've gotten you this far, I want you to look at the 3 logos on those vehicles in the circle, okay? If your eyesight is terrible, they are not the same. Those are 3 separate companies. And so here is the so what behind all of this, if none of this has attracted you thus far. You're not internalizing or just building a maintenance company for your PM company. You are building a service business and I would argue strongly, and I put my money where my mouth is, you are building a service business that you can then scale to other businesses that can serve your property management company. One of those trucks is Stonelink Property Management Maintenance. That's the bottom vehicle with the ladder. The one up and to the left, the red and blue S, is Stonelink Plumbing and Heating. It's a 14-person, fully licensed plumbing and heating company with master plumbers and master pipe fitters, right? Whose sole existence when we started that company was servicing the needs of the PM company, because we in our world found that plumbing was probably the most painful piece of maintenance that we couldn't internalize at the time. And the pain got so much that I just said, screw it, we're gonna solve for this, okay? Who here, I lied, sorry, I'm gonna ask you one more. Who's ever had trouble getting a plumber on the phone as a property manager, right? And that's like the time where you really need somebody to pick up the phone. And we were pretty good size and we still couldn't get somebody. We had 3 different plumbing companies that we did a crap ton of work with, and sometimes we still couldn't get them to respond. So we said, screw it. We went out and bought a father-son plumbing team. We've grown it to 14 fully licensed plumbers. And here's the really fun part, kids. We've talked about revenue a little bit. I'm gonna talk about more right now. The business model, the service model that we've just built by internalizing maintenance, we're able to step over here and apply to the plumbing company, and it's scaled now from 2 to 14, and 70% of their revenue has nothing to do with the property management company. I'm gonna say that again. We bought this small mom and pop solely so they could service the needs of the PM company. And they did, and they are, and they get preferential priority treatment and pricing and all that good stuff. But now, today, a year and a half into existence, 70% of the money that comes through the door doesn't come from the PM company. And that was made possible largely by cutting our teeth and building the service-based business model for our in-house maintenance team. But we're not done, because there's one other vehicle on that circle up there, and it's a T. It stands for Trap Rock Landscaping. Everything we just did with the plumbing company, I did a little bit out of order because landscaping came before plumbing and heating, but whatever. For the purposes of this discussion, about 2.5 years ago, we did the same thing with landscaping and snow removal. Because in our neck of the woods, God help me, in our neck of the woods, okay, snow removal is a big deal. Not because we get a ton of it, and maybe Anna could back me up, but Rhode Islanders are like allergic to snow or something. The minute there's 2 inches on the ground, they're freaking the hell out. Our tenants are lighting us up like the 4th of July. And when we had to externalize that, it was opening us up to 1-star reviews, pissed off residents, clients even calling us, because God help me, one of the tenants got their phone number, and they're saying, there's 3 inches of snow, I can't get to work. Really? It's 2-3 inches of snow, you can't get to work? But in fairness, we had a contract in place with a third-party vendor, but they just didn't deliver. So we said, the hell with that, and we took that same maintenance service model that we've been talking about, and we applied it over here on the landscaping side. So it's allowed us now to scale. So we have an in-house maintenance team, we have an in-house cleaning team, we have a plumbing and heating company, and we have a landscaping and snow removal company. And in the last month, we just launched Stonelink Pest Control. So we've now internalized pest control. Okay? And so now, how much more value do you think we are, assuming we are executing with excellence against those things, to our clients when we're able to be that entire service chain solution than if we were just property managers, right? My value proposition to our clients is entirely different. If you go to our website, you will see that we proudly, boldly scream vertical integration, which is basically what I've just walked you through, right? Because we strongly believe, firmly believe, I'm dying on this hill, that it is the way to go, it's the way of the future, it's the way that you will demonstrate value for your clients in the future and harden you and safeguard you and future-proof your company, right, against new competitors, new technologies, new software that comes out, whatever God knows Zillow's going to try to do next, right? If you're the service chain, if you're the solution, and they have to go through to you to get it, it's game over. You're bulletproof. It's done. And if you do it really, really good, it will help you grow over and over and over again. And so the takeaway I want you to have is this. Your PM company is just the start. Look at it as acting as the flywheel, okay, that can spawn or be the hub, if you will, of all of these different spokes of service-based businesses. And it started all right here today with your own in-house maintenance team. So with that, I would say thank you for your time and attention. If you haven't fallen asleep, I really, really appreciate that. If you have questions, I would be doing my best to answer them, or I'm going to deflect them deftly to the two gentlemen up front. That's it.